Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Friday, December 8th. Here we've gotten the last of the 7 days, which, yeah, we had plenty of time. I thought this was saying that it ended on December 4th, which, if that was the case, then we had basically 4 days to log in once per day 7 times, which wouldn't have even made sense. But yeah, nope, this reward, easy enough to receive as long as you logged in 7 times in a month. That being said, some very big amounts of rewards, nor does it give the level of enthusiasm and flash that I think the 25th anniversary of the trading card game, which is what I believe they're celebrating, not just the 25th anniversary of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga / anime. Looks like we've got a Duelist Cup, so we're going to have to focus on that, which that should work fairly well. Too. So we've got this to purchase. The Tri-Brigade character that in my Zodiac Tri-Brigade I use quite a bit. But it's not like I have any real special love for this character. Anyways, like Shurage, yeah, the Ominous Omen. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. And then another wallpaper. And they're asking quite a bit at 250 gems for wallpapers. Meanwhile, what have we got? We've got apparently no packs here, but we're going to get packs to the Duelist Cup for these cards, which will maybe give me a few cards I don't have, but not that many. I'm really going closer to just getting 2 or 3 copies of a lot of cards. Seems to be maybe angel focused somewhat. So meanwhile, hey, we've got new buttons now where we can open 10 or 20 packs. What you'd want to see in any collectible card game or game with microtransactions and loot boxes, effectively, is there to be some small extra bonus reward for purchasing things in larger groups if you're going to go that route. Opening 20 packs potentially giving you a 5% chance or even a 0.05% chance of getting an ultra rare, which if we had the real percentage chances of getting an ultra rare, I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't actually very, very close to 0.05%. But yeah, if you're not going to give any special reward for opening 20 packs, all you're really doing is saving a few players time in opening packs, which really then counters your whole idea of having opening animations and trying to get people hyped through that process. How did I... Let's see. Yep. Guess we'll just jump in here and we'll just see what we can do with this Duelist Cup, assuming we can start playing. Apparently, I did well enough to get some reward tickets and a card protector and some gems, 400 gems, which started me at level 7 instead of level 2. I guess you don't have a level 1 here. And I guess we're just going to keep on trying to play for gems at least. The real motivation here, I think, stops at about level 18, depending on what you can do there. And that's going to be very much depending on what I can do. Can I just select this deck completely? Yes. So I don't have to relearn any deck for the Duelist Cups, which is nice, but overall it does not really change what you're doing. It's just distracting me from playing ranked. and trying to get higher up in the ranks. So the Game Awards happened, and so this stream is going to, I think, mostly focus around that. We, for the most part, rambled on and talked about my channel getting in trouble and getting deleted due to a mistake in their own warning system or strike system at YouTube. But in that process, I did see the warning is on my dashboard, and they said that there was some way you could take a tutorial type procedure that would make the warning go away in 90 days. I tried to do that. I clicked every link I could find. I read the rules as far as adult content. In my case, it was having blurred pictures of adult games and describing them audio wise. And the problem with YouTube is that they're nonsense. There's too many people saying too many different things. The link I click here says something different than a different link I click there. The way their own channel explains their rules is different than the way it's written in the two other places. So it would be the equivalent of have a school having 5 different rule books written by 5 different teachers, which is inherently, I suppose, what does happen a lot, is that there is teachers that just say, I make the rules and I tell you when you've broken them, even if you didn't know. And there might be a school that has a rule book, but nobody is really being held to the rules in either direction. Lots of people get away with breaking rules. Lots of teachers create new rules or don't enforce old rules. And in a bigger system of society, that is also reflected in that the lots of police or policing forces create whatever rules they want and make up any rules they want and don't enforce a lot of other rules. And then there's so many laws in that case on the books that the enforcement of laws are inconsistent and contradictory often. So yeah, it's inherently, you will find in the world almost every system is an unfair system, and I think it's intentionally in part created that way, and I think it is also just a very human thing to have it created that way. So in one way, that is the interesting thought, certainly around like Elon Musk owning Twitter and just kind of ruling it by this one person's decision and this one person's decisions only, regardless of now I don't think Elon Musk is really doing a good job of being effectively the judge, jury and executioner of Twitter, but it is certainly an interesting thought that you only have to stay on the good side of one person on Twitter, really, versus YouTube, where you have to stay on the good side of unknowable, unrecognizable algorithms and a whole bunch of people that are in other countries that don't even understand English or the context or cultures of the United States, where Google and YouTube are set. A bunch of outsourced work that are overworked and don't really care. And then a bunch of somewhat crazy people in California running YouTube too, each with their own little groups and contradictions. Anyways, that's a long way of saying that I'm hoping in 90 days the warning goes away. I'm hoping then that sets kind of the timer as far as I will potentially not make that much footage between now and about, I'd say, 84 days. We may be about at that point. So yeah, that would be nearly 3 months of not making content, on top of nearly a month, if not 2, already of not making content because I've been working on my smart on-air sign. So I don't know if I can really pull that off. And I could make content, that's fine. I just am gonna have to hold on to all of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Livestream videos for 90 days. Because I don't want to upload the recorded version of, even though I edited that version, I don't want to even risk uploading a chopped up edited version of that video while the warning is still there. Of course, 90 days may pass and the warning may still be there. A year may pass and the warning may still be there. It may be another glitched part of their system. But yeah. It is ridiculous to receive this warning and then they say if you do it again you'll get a strike, fully knowing that my channel is automatically deleted without receiving a warning whatsoever by the algorithm the first time. So there is really no security in that. It's the equivalent of you may get a small fine if you speed 5 miles over the speed limit, or they may impound your car and shoot you in the head for speeding 5 miles over the speed limit. You just don't know. Yeah, for the most part though, I'm not really worrying about it and not really focusing on it, which is probably the smartest thing I could possibly ever do. Of course I say that as I just talked about it a whole bunch. Otherwise, for the accountability section, I decided to drink a energy drink, not 5-hour energy drink, extra strength, which is particularly poisonous and unhealthy to drink, but just a smaller, less potent energy drink to see if I could just adjust my schedule, sleep schedule, to try and stay more awake during the day while I was working on my smart on-air sign. And I started to dip my toe into enabling the secure boot and the flash encryption, and because I drank the energy drink, it put my brain in this drunk-like status, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's just like I'm awake, my body is full of caffeine, so I can't sleep, or won't sleep well, even if I could go to sleep. But also, I can tell my brain is not working like well at all. It's like probably nothing like a migraine, but a low-level buzz or pressure around my brain. So I really screwed myself over effectively there by drinking the energy drink, because then I spent a lot of extra time not working when I really should have been working. I've only made a small amount of progress as far as getting the flash encryption set up, and I haven't even really started the secure boot process. There are several, it feels like fairly short length keys that you can burn into the E fuses, which are parts of memory you can write to once, but then it can never be changed again. Yeah, so I imagine what I should do is generate the 6, I believe it is, keys that it can hold, and write 6 keys to it, and then see if, and I'll need to do some more research, if there's a way in the updates to revoke one of the older keys if necessary. That in the end of the day, it kind of feels like you could probably just brute force with random keys, because the key length just doesn't seem that long. Of course, that might be fairly slow and difficult, but yeah, I'd only need to burn one of the disable one of the keys because somebody got access to that key anyways. So it's really just a backup option. It's not a terrible option to be ready to go compared to the alternate of just burning one key. I spent a lot of time just setting up and figuring out the right process to read the flash using the ESP IDF program, which is its own separate little program. So it took me a while to figure out, could I even in the process read the unencrypted program. And you can read the program, and you can read the file system, and the file system in particular, which is holding the Wi-Fi passwords and all the other configuration files, is not encrypted at all. So there's just plain text stuff you definitely can read. The actual programs themselves are binary programs, so it's not like you get the full commented in plain English source code of the program. It's not like CircuitPython, where it's interpreted as it goes and it is pure commentated source code that you put on the CircuitPython devices. But it's just the like ESP32 CPU's instruction set, so you could take that assembler code and build back from that. And you don't need to do any of that really, because you can just copy the entirety of the flash without the encryption. There is something also to the whole process that I kind of question why it doesn't work that way. In that, to me, it seems like there should be 2 encryption processes. There should be a way in which it looks for updates using the encryption keys that I provide, and then every single individual device should create its own random encryption after that point and encrypt the rest of the program based off of that random encryption code. That way, there would be no way between the flash memory and the CPU of one ESP32 to just copy everything, if you could copy everything, which the thought is you can't copy everything. That is the thought. I honestly question how much security really is there, and honestly, it may not matter too much. At a certain level, I could spend months, if not years, trying to increase the security on my program, far past the point of time it would take somebody to just, in a white room, recreate the same actions of my program. All it is an on-air sign that turns on when you're recording or streaming via OBS. Like that doesn't take that much programming. In fact, this whole project really was supposed to just take about a week, which I was stupid to even begin to think any kind of project was going to take just a week. I still need to work on the instructions some more, but honestly, I wouldn't mind putting out the tester units, the prototypes. I need out without the instructions being much more polished than they are at this point. And then there was one thing I thought of in the code that, as I'm thinking forward as to what's a different way I could sell this chip without having to do so much work, there is a scenario here where the over-the-counter on-air enclosure sign, the plastic part that I'm using, the circuitry in that could change, and I might need to send a positive 5-volt signal to turn off the light instead of sending a positive 5 volts 5 volts signal to turn on the lights. I don't know why you would particularly create circuitry that way, but it's not unheard of to pull up a voltage instead of pulling down a voltage. So, since it probably means nothing really in the circuitry if the wire's not connected, and it really means nothing in the processing steps in the code, since it's literally just going to do a couple of actions, I added an inverse signal that it will always just do the exact opposite of what the first pin does. And that way, if some point that is necessary, that'll be an option. In particular, what I was thinking of was you have a normally open and normally closed signal that you have on door locks. And I could see having an automatic door lock or an automatic door opener even, and saying, hey, I actually want my door to lock when I'm streaming, which is probably not safe, but there are certainly ways you can make it safer to do that. But in that case, you do create a situation where I could send one wire versus another wire. That doesn't seem like I can do anything. And yeah, the more forward-thinking I can be by just pre-writing encryption keys that I have in my back pocket, by having the programming already flip an inverse signal if it ever needs to be used. There's plenty of pins even on the tiny little ESP32C3s that I'm using to toggle several other things, I'm sure. Honestly, I should take the next step and program it to control either 3 or 4 wire LEDs. Yeah, I should take that next step. That way, if there's a change, the LEDs that I'm using right now are just 2 wires, just a positive and a negative to connect a circuit. But why not set it up so that it could potentially connect to other styles of LEDs? I'll have to do some research there and see if that doesn't just get too much into the weeds, as far as all of a sudden I have to communicate with far too many chips for it to be worth it. Because there are a lot of different chips. There's about, I think, I'd say a dozen or so, maybe half a dozen different LED driver chips when you start getting into 3 and 4 wire connections. There are also 2-wire LEDs that need data signals to work. And it gets down to a pulse width modulation situation, which maybe you could skip around a lot of that and not actually program for it. As far as the accountability section otherwise, did I do anything else? Still watching a lot of Ghost Whisperer. I'm in the middle of that 3rd season where, yeah, that's the season I remember seeing a few episodes from, as far as the idea of the ghosts getting stronger and there being this longer connected narrative of ghosts being trapped underground. But I really didn't pay any attention to it, so I really don't know the story. But I'm also not paying attention to it now, so I really am only watching maybe an 1/8 of it. A lot of times I'll start an episode and I'll have it fully muted and just playing in the background. So it's only if I happen to look up do I see anything at all. Meanwhile, I'm still playing on my phone, and on that I do have something to report. Star Trek Lower Decks has completely been finished at this point in a shocking short amount of time. It really has only been about 3 months in total since I started playing Star Trek Lower Decks, and it has now just left me at this end-stage state where it says you can continue to collect resources, but in reality the main game mode, as opposed to the events mode, which the events are still happening and I can get resources from them. Main game mode though only is giving me the lowest of the 3 currencies in the game, and that lowest currency can't be used on anything at all. It can only be used to upgrade buildings, and there's only a slight reward for upgrading buildings, and once you've maxed out the buildings to their total possibility, there's nothing else you'll get from it. So the game is just really done, other than doing events. So I've lost half of the interactive on Star Trek Lower Decks. The problem there is that I'm gonna lose at this rate. Problem here is that they effectively have to follow the storyline and the characters of the Lower Decks animated show, whereas it would have made a lot more sense for them to just have an episode in the game and much more levels in the game based on just every single previous Star Trek episode from every single previous Star Trek series. Had they done that, they would have had a good 11 and 12 seasons of shows that they could have had levels on, and the levels could have been bad, and they could have been not particularly well thought through. And that's generally what they're doing, but they're leaning on the animated series, making references to the other Star Trek shows. And so the video game is limited to only referencing what is being referenced to. What happens in the cartoon is limiting what they can actually make a level in the game around. So yeah, there's basically nothing nothing that can be done in the game. I feel like I'm somewhat close to the same situation with Tinkafuma, in that I don't know if they've kind of unlocked another area in Tinkafuma, but I do kind of also feel like I'm just at the max level, and I'm in a stage 2 of gameplay in a gacha game where they're really not adding a lot of new characters or new story levels, so now I'm just being asked to maximize like every single character in the collection. But then also, it is a much more proper gacha game, whereas Star Trek Lower Decks isn't a gacha game really. So there's like limited seasonal events that have passed me by. That I may never be able to really catch up on. And yeah, Seven Mortal Sins Ecstasy, I'm still kind of struggling to find a good in on that game, in the sense that it's so demanding of my time, and I just really haven't bothered to put the time into it to try and figure out if I even care about the game. Okay. So that pretty much just leaves me with Memento Mori being the one that is the rock solid, this is the game I actually want to play experience. I wonder if I could trigger this. No, because it's your opponent special summoning things. Pretty much right now. Yeah, I don't think I fully finished my thought though as far as the adult rules and stuff. If audio description is not acceptable, which it seems like that is also listed, then my thought of looking at adult games and doing a fall list cleanup off screen and then mentioning like once per year, here's the adult games of this year that actually were well received, even that I just don't think actually works. So it kind of feels like there is just a full desire here by YouTube to force me to censor myself and thus censor this information. And so I need just like an entirely different website. So that's something that maybe should just be a Twitch special, even though I'm sure Twitch isn't particularly enthusiastic around that idea either. Speaking of specials, the Game Awards happened. I had it playing in the background. That was another thing that spent a lot of time with yesterday. Mostly a lot of trailers. Like there's the Game Awards, and then there's a Summer Game Fest. And Summer Game Fest feels a lot smaller. whereas I kind of feel like Summer Game Fest should just be as big as the Game Awards and feel a lot the same, about the same size. Previous year's criticisms still feel like they are the same, in that it definitely feels like Jeff Keighley just wants to be the presenter for every single award instead of having a second host, second presenter come out. And I think there's definitely a bit of an ego issue there where Jeff Keighley probably should be in the background and not even on the stage, or that he would come out at the Game of the Year awards and present just that one award. They didn't learn their lessons in the desire to have people come up on stage and receive an award. The stage still has a lot of steps with, I didn't look for it much, but it didn't seem like there was a massive amount of security there. I do think this year they managed to prevent any big event from happening, but the idea that there isn't perhaps just a few steps right in front of the stage or steps to the left or right of the stage to step up is crazy. Inherently, I would want the nominees to be sitting in a separate area in total, and so only the nominees for that specific award could even get to the stage, and that there would be a gate or barrier to get into that separate area, and then they'd go back to their normal seats later, if you're even going to do that much. The Game Awards happening when it does feels like a mistake to me, frankly. I think it really should happen in about February. The problem here is you're giving awards to games that have already come out, undercutting potential hype for that the industry would like to have around games that just came out and are on sale for the Christmas season. And you're still running into a problem where Baldur's Gate 3, which we'll go ahead and spoil, set won Game of the Year. He probably deserved to win Game of the Year. The only other thing I could even think is maybe the Resident Evil 7 remake. But it definitely also feels like, since Resident Evil 7 remake came out very early in the year and Baldur's Gate 3 came out very close to the end of year event, it definitely does just kind of feel like there is an unfairness there. It's not even unfair to the judges, not that I particularly want to be fair to the judges, but you are rushing at the end of the year to play these games that are released later, whereas a couple more months doing this somewhere around the end of February would be really ideal in my book. I also think if you moved the Game Awards to February, you could then try and close the gap to get it closer to when E3 used to happen, and then it could just be the new E3. You'd be putting out trailers for games that potentially would come out in the same year's time. I know there's a lot of people and a lot of reason to be tied around it being an annual event instead of it being a fiscal year related event, where it would start in April or and the year would end in February, whatever. But it's not like there's a lot of games released in January and February anyway, so moving it to the end of February would work. The trailers would make a lot more sense. They're still doing a pre-show where they had this lady presenter be the solo presenter, just standing there announcing games. There definitely was a point there where they just rushed through a lot of awards and nobody got up on stage and nobody gave an acceptance speech. There's way more trailers, way more gimmicks, way more hype. I again would have thought that that would have been an ego thing, but I kind of still would have to think that, because it was very similar to last year in that a lot of game awards were just announced and nobody representing those companies were apparently there or in the audience. And last year I assumed it's because a lot of people just frankly don't respect the Game Awards, and the Game Awards just haven't rightfully earned the respect of the game development community, so they didn't bother to come. But I almost wonder if they weren't invited, or if they were just weren't invited to give a speech. Particularly this year, I could see a lot of like Israel-Palestine political speeches being given. And maybe that is one thing that the Game Awards guy, we'll just call him the Game Awards guy since I think his name's Jeff Keighley, but I'm not sure. Like, maybe that's something that he knows, is that even last year there would have been a lot of political speeches, and we do see that echoed in the Oscars in the past, certainly, where people have come up and given speeches and then they've said inherently political, divisive things that has just caused some controversy. And that the Game Awards is just not an old enough award show that they'd start courting controversy just to get attention. But in the end, I think it really is way more of a case that Game Awards is probably just making money hand over fist by showing trailers and awards and promoting new games, and they're just not making money giving out awards. So it definitely feels to me like the awards are secondary to trailer announcements. And then there is only a small amount of truth to the fact that the big orchestra events are a way of making the awards ceremony feel like it's a bigger event than it really is. In a lot of ways, if you took away the big orchestra, if you took away the fancy stage and the theater it's in, the Game Awards is very similar to what almost anybody could do out of their bedroom, out of their basement, with just a webcam, frankly. Stand in front of a camera, announce award winners and shoot to pre-rendered footage of trailers. I guess it is noticeable that the Game Awards has never tried to make the claim that game footage was happening live on stage, but in fairness, nobody has tried to do that in a long time. But yeah, overall, I don't know if there's really anything that I found particularly interesting. As far as all the announcements and all of that. Did all really just feel like same as last year, with a slight change here and there, different games. I am in this weird place where personally I kind of don't want to hear from game developers, because I know they're all kind of crazy SJWs, but then I also kind of would rather hear from them than than see another trailer. Yeah, honestly, the only thing I'd do with the Game Awards is move it to late February. Just get it out of this season, and once you do that, see what it feels like once you get to that point. Might as well activate this. So this is going to be a little weird, I suppose, as far as we go through the news, but we might as well start going through the news. There is this new possibility, certainly, that streams will be shorter. And it's not like I particularly am doing anything exciting here with Yu-Gi-Oh! Here we have a GameDeveloper.com article. Apparently a game that I've never even heard of called The Walking Dead Betrayal is getting delisted after 3 months of early access. Apparently it was a social deduction survival game, but it couldn't find a path to reach a desired audience. In part, I don't think it was advertised. Like, if there's one thing I can say I think I do a pretty good job on, is trying to hear about press releases and know about all the new games coming out. Have I really proven that I need to do all of that? No. It is very, very possible that a lot of that's just wasteful activity, but yeah, it definitely says something when you have a big name product like The Walking Dead, which at this point is rapidly declining in its own valuation, and The Walking Dead franchise is really becoming second tier very quickly. We had at least 2 terrible Walking Dead games. No, I think actually it's been at least 3 terrible Walking Dead games released this year. And Walking Dead Betrayal is one of those 3, I guess. The Game Awards also had the Steam Deck OLED giveaway, which when I woke up and started watching the Game Awards, it put me in a wait queue after the page not reloading for a long time, and the wait queue went on for at least 11 minutes past the point that the event stopped, and as such, as soon as the event stopped, the page loaded up and said, well, you can't enter. So I didn't have a chance at all to enter the giveaway for the Steam Deck LED, and they were also giving away Lenovo or ROG Ally. I think it was a Lenovo Steam Deck equivalent, and I didn't even try for that one. They were only giving away 100 anyways of the Steam Deck LEDs, and I imagine a lot more people were doing that. They did have a Iron Mouse win an award for Best VTuber, which I think that was the category, which is kind of crazy. And then they also brought in some YouTuber that I've never even heard of as a presenter. Here's the lady that did the presentation before the Game Awards really happened. She's in the audience basically doing the presentation before a presentation. I think that is a big problem that needs to be addressed too. It's just not working anymore to have a gimmick where you are doing 1 or 2 events around your main event. Day of the Devs happening, I think, a day before. Yeah, that was stupid. But yeah, Day of the Devs happening before the event, and then the comfy presentation, whatever that was, cozy gaming, comfy gaming, something by that name also potentially happening. Yeah, I kind of think I want to stop playing here. We played almost an hour. And in part-time, also just a little bit more awake today, so I didn't really need that much of a warm-up. But there is definitely a weirdness in that warm-ups for live streams now may take a different form factor as I'm talking about games that came out on Steam first, and that is going to just put things in different orders. 480 gems with all that progress, which just really highlights how these Duels Cup awards are not really doing anything. I dueled exactly 4 times. It's kind of nice to see the aqua green color dress here, because everything else at the Game Awards is black with maybe a little bit of orange highlights. It definitely feels to me like there's room for more color, and that we can break out of the gamer color palette for an award show of orange and in darkness. I can see possibly security here, a guy here, a guy here. This looks like this is a camera guy, although there is white writing behind him, so that might be a security. There's a guy here too, so potentially you could have had several security people hiding around here, but you definitely can see these steps here wrapping all around the stage. It is also worth pointing out that they gave an award for Mario Wonder to Doug Bowser, the president of Nintendo of America, when Doug Bowser really didn't have anything to do with the development of Mario Wonder, and I don't think Nintendo of America really had anything to do with Mario Wonder. So you still have the Japanese snub. There are several non-Nintendo Japanese people who got up on stage and had translators, but yeah, here's the YouTuber guy giving away an award, which for a YouTuber guy, knowing nothing about him, he was dressed nice and he didn't say anything or do anything, so what more can you really ask for a presenter is to not cause a controversy. Here you have a guy dressed in a partial kimono, it looks like. I think the guy in front of here this is the Baldur's Gate team, and one of the guys was wearing like armor, metal armor over his clothes, which is interesting. Jeff Keighley has a fancy looking suit, but honestly it looks more like a leisure suit or a smoking jacket, which I don't think people really wear smoking jackets anymore, but it doesn't fully come off as the full 3-piece suit that you might want a presenter to be in. Just a standard black but he is much better than anything else. Than most people dressed up. Here you can see an example of your average game developer or management of game developer in the t-shirt and jeans. You can see they changed the stages with several different tones of dark colors, but really should just be a lot better looking. Brighter looking in the colors. But yeah, this is basically how half of the awards were given. It's just him standing here and here's an award for this, here's an award for that, here's an award for this, here's an award for that. They had a gimmick here where somebody was in the power suit and Todd Howard showed up. Why would Todd Howard show up when they were talking about Fallout? I don't know. There was several events where they were talking about like video game TV shows and promoting that, which it is increasingly going to be a problem in that they're going to try and make TV shows and movies and have the Game Awards at least cover them as if that's the same as a game when it really is replacing a game. Jordan Peele got up on stage and announced that he's working with Hideo Kojima on this game called OD. I saw people calling it Overdose. I'm not sure that Overdose is actually going to be the official name, though. I think OD is just going to be it, and I wouldn't be surprised if OD in the game it reveals itself to be something different. As far as the trailer goes, I don't think it's anywhere as good of a trailer or as intriguing of a trailer as Death Stranding, and we will just have to wait and see how Hideo Kojima makes a game in general. It's probably going to be a disappointment. I think Death Stranding was a major disappointment compared to what the trailer was implying. Let's see. One problem with the Game Awards and their YouTube channel is that they put out trailers for every single game that they show a trailer on instantaneously after the fact, when it would just make a lot more sense for them to put out trailers over the course of the next few days instead of just live. Of course, they want to go live to get all the views. Here you have another example of people in colorful and different looking clothing and nice fancy dresses, and ladies in fancy dresses. Not really a lot of ladies on stage are getting awards in general, but it is a fairly male dominated industry. Does feel like Nintendo maybe got more of an involvement here this year than they did last year. And maybe that is really a case where the Nintendo learned a lesson from the year previously, and Nintendo of Japan didn't want the old president of Nintendo of America, Reggie Fils-Aimé, to be highlighted and shown in the audience. They wanted Doug Bowser to be highlighted and shown, and they wanted Nintendo games to be shown. Yeah, of course, Nintendo's not going to do anything really crazy like announce the Switch 2 at the Game Awards. Here is a skit with Gonzo, which, while that may be the best thing that let's see if we can hit play here and look at these trailers. By the way, Streamlabs OBS, or just called Streamlabs now, they were forced to do it, get rid of it. has now the feature, or a new feature, just to stream to Twitter/X, and I didn't know you could stream video to Twitter, but apparently that's a somewhat new thing that they're doing. That being said, it'd be kind of crazy to try to be a Twitter video producer. They're doing a very silly skit here where they talk over each other and say the same thing. But yeah, the idea of video being on Twitter is an interesting thought. Yeah. I'm optimistically wondering if maybe at some point Elon Musk gets bored of Twitter, leaves it in just a very different state where he breaks down the establishment effectively and leaves just a lot of shambles for somebody else to build it up, and starts just a few ideas in the way. The problem with Twitter having video streaming is that it should have had video streaming years ago, but they had made an agreement with This Week in Tech as far as a video podcasting streaming service that pre-exists Twitter to not make video, and thus effectively trigger a kind of copyright lawsuit that Leo Laporte would almost certainly try and do from This Week in Tech. That being said, Twitter should have just ignored Leo Laporte. This Week in Tech is a small franchise of video podcasts and podcasts talking about technology. They could have fought in court and then gotten a settlement very easily, and then Twitter itself 5-10 years ago should have been allowing for video streaming and competing with Twitch and the likes of YouTube. Now that Elon Musk has renamed Twitter to X, you have the problem now of not being sued by Twit This Week in Tech for having videos, and you now have the problem of X videos, the porn site, potentially suing Twitter X because of that. I don't even know this Lenovo Legion. I haven't even heard of this one. This must either be brand new or I just totally ignored it. Or maybe I saw one review for it and it was really, really poor. But yeah. At some point I would like to see Twitter do videos and compete and create competition, even if in the end of the day it is just going to be a third competitor to add some competition. There's also the problem that Twitch also starts TWIT, so they all need to have slightly different names. This Week in Tech, Twitch, and Twitter. This guy went on not super long compared to his previous accepted speech last year. This is the voice actor who plays the God of War Kratos character. But he did go on probably a little bit too long making jokes about how long he went. And they went on too long making jokes about how they had scripted jokes, because they started playing, like the orchestra started playing music 5 seconds into his speech. But there definitely was a skit being done here, taking up time, when you compare that to them just having Jeff Keighley announce winners in rapid succession. It still would make a lot more sense to have this guy, this girl, whatever, this lady, split in between Jeff Keighley announcements. So he would get on stage and announce a winner, then step off stage and could take a bathroom break, drink some water. She would step on stage and announce the next winner. He would then she'd step off and take a break, and then he'd step on. Just go back and forth that way. And then at the end of the Game of the Year awards, they can both be on stage. That would be fine. Just kind of work that way. You could even have a third presenter if necessary, ready to go. And then that is only in the cases anyways where you need to have your main presenters present things. You also had they had plenty of guest presenters presenting awards too. But yeah, it definitely feels too egotistical for Jeff Keighley to be the presenter. He is just not that charismatic a person to be he's not Billy Crystal, basically, and that's an old reference for certainly. But the Oscars and other award shows have had that same problem where they just have not had good charismatic presenters. Anyways, apparently they were giving away tickets or trips to Super Nintendo World in Hollywood, not the one in Japan. It's a lot of rubbing elbows with celebrities. Here's Timothy Chalamet, which is a name I've heard, but honestly I couldn't have placed the face. And yeah, there's far too much of that certainly going on. Anyways, apparently they were giving PS5s away too. Didn't even know about that one. So a significant step up in giveaways, and I missed them all. In fairness, the only thing I really would have wanted to win would have been the Steam Deck OLED. This flute guy was in the orchestra, and he's a big presence, and he was a big presence in the orchestra too. In a funny way, I feel like he's kind of the clown of the orchestra in that he is there to distract you or give you something visual to look at while the rest of the orchestra plays, which that stage is not really set up great for an orchestra. It's just not deep enough. I imagine the acoustics in the area are not as well thought out as they should be. So anyways, we're scrolling now back fairly far. And I don't know if I've really said too much there. Anyways, other than, yeah, the Game Awards felt like an award show. Mostly boring. Not really worth the amount of time to watch and sit through. Particularly when you have sources like Gematsu, who are very likely going to write an article about every single game trailer and every single game and get down to the meat and the potatoes of the meal and cut out all the salad and the fluff and the unimportant stuff. GameDeveloper.com has an oddly phrased headline here, in that they say Microsoft is letting ZeniMax contract workers unionize and offer some full-time roles. The quote here is, "We wanted to ensure we could secure the same working conditions, fair pay, and benefits as our directly employed ZeniMax contractors." Inherently, no company lets employees unionize. Employees are taking some power back and forcing a union unionization and the laws of the land, the government, somewhat protect workers' rights to unionize, which that is the thing that is not being said here is workers' rights versus Microsoft apparently in GameDevelopers.com's mind being the authority to let contractor workers unionize. And the only reason any company lets, quote unquote, lets contractor workers or any workers unionize is because they know that they were going to fail if they tried to stop it and union bust, which is illegal, and that they were going to get more bad or they were going to get more bad press than it was worth if they did that. And every time we hear a story like this where it's contract workers, I'm pretty sure I would assume that that is just QA workers, of which now that Starfield is out, I'm not sure if they really are going to need that much QA workers at ZeniMax, but they are going to. ZeniMax and its subsidiaries, being itself being a subsidiary of Microsoft, still has plenty of other games in development that they could probably keep union workers employed 24/7 always. There may very well be QA workers right now that are working on early builds of the next Elder Scrolls Skyrim game. It won't be called Skyrim or Skyrim 2. Although, who knows, it might actually be called Skyrim 2. YouTube is continuously promoting this idea of AI, Google AI, to advertise things. Let's see. Here we have GameDeveloper.com pointing it out. The Game Awards 2023 sidelines devs in favor of reveals, celebs, and one big Muppet. Gonzo being here really is the best thing Jim Henson has done in a while. There is a Labyrinth pinball game in development, so they've licensed that out. There's a movie they made that was awful called The Portable Door, which I think is their most recent movie. There's, I think, a 25th anniversary Blu-ray UHD of the Labyrinth movie. But yeah, the Jim Henson Company has been in shambles and terribly run ever since Jim Henson died. It probably would have been just as good if Disney had acquired them, which is what they were trying to work out. And yeah, almost certainly the reason why Star Wars was acquired by Disney is because they didn't want to repeat the mistake of not acquiring Star Wars before George Lucas potentially dies. But yeah, you'd think that there would have been at least one new Muppets movie or even TV show in the past couple of years, and I think they made a Halloween TV show maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. But it does, I guess, at some level benefit you to have them show up. But you definitely wouldn't see Gonzo showing up at the Oscars unless the Oscars got really, really desperate. So if you want this to be, if you want the Game Awards to be the prestigious equivalent to the Oscars, you can't do silly bits with puppets. So yeah, here GameDeveloper.com has a full list of all the winners. I'm not going to bother to even go through it. Almost all the nominees were games that were likely going to win, and so you can pretty much guess who is going to win, and there's no major surprise there. And that is another problem, certainly, of the Game Awards, too, is that the awards part are highly unlikely to be surprising. Like, you're not going to get major twists and turns and upsets around the Game Awards. Yeah. There's the whole thing of how to create live videos on X. I was looking at that. That being said, I still don't really know how long a video could be on X, nor is there really like a great system to show videos. You basically have to go to the For You page, and then there's just more Instagram vertical videos being shown here, and that seems to be about it. And it's just like nothing here that really feels like a interface, at least from a web browser perspective, that would make a good experience looking for videos compared to YouTube's experience. Let's see. Game Awards winners announced from Game Developer. Well, this is Gamatsu breaking down the Game Awards in a little bit better. Gamatsu consistently doing better journalism here by putting in bold the winner while highlighting the other nominees. The next step certainly on this too is for these game developers that won an award or even nominated, the prestige kind of needs to be there that we see Game Awards as a logo used as advertising for games. We haven't even seen anybody say, hey, we'll put our game on sale before or after the Game Awards if we win or if we don't win. GameDeveloper.com also had this article. They're probably making more about this than really it should be. GameStop has put in a filing that firing the CEO would be a quote-unquote risk after reporting a $14.7 million operating loss. I don't know if this isn't really a case where GameStop still is trying to go bankrupt, or if GameStop is just incompetent. I think the CEO of GameStop right now is one of those Reddit type people that is actually trying to make GameStop be profitable and successful. So if they fire the CEO, that definitely would be a shot across the bow saying, hey, we don't want to actually succeed. But he also might be just a jerk and may not actually be capable of doing what he wants to do. So maybe he would get fired. Although inherently, in a filing, if a financial filing where you're legally required to list any potential risks, almost any company could say firing our CEO or firing any management would be a risk. So this really is this really could be a risk anywhere. When you get into the weeds here below the fold, GameStop has acknowledged that its decision to oust the former president and CEO, Matthew Furlong, that's not the CEO I was thinking about, Ryan Cohen, is the person I was thinking of. Firing him without cause in June of 2023. So they're potentially saying that the backlash of that may still be a risk, which, yeah, still it's way too inside baseball, and we'll just have to see what happens. And I guess this isn't really a threat that they were going to fire Ryan Cohen, although maybe it's more of a threat that they'd hire back Matthew Furlong, though I don't see why. And if you actually run the numbers here, if Matthew Furlong lost $50.5 million quarterly, and then they reported this quarter a $14.7 million operating loss, that's a significant improvement. It's going in the right direction. It's still not making profits, but whatever. I could see right now GameStop coming out and saying, hey, we're going to start selling movies. Because, you know what? Best Buy isn't going to be selling movies, so why don't we start selling movies too? It would make a lot of sense. Particularly, you could see GameStop not having any, like, NC-17 or even particularly extreme R-rated movies, and that GameStop would be more of a family video type store that is catering and having kids movies and teenager PG-13 movies on the shelves, targeting a whole new generation of kids who may want to watch movies. Maybe if you get them young, if they're watching movies in the car, in the portable DVD players in the car, that makes sense. Let's see. The outgoing PlayStation boss Jim Ryan was presented with a PlayStation 1 style PS5 at a thank you party. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Ryan doesn't actually play video games at all. But yeah, custom looking controller for the most part, and shells. Wouldn't be surprised if this is somewhat of a prototype. Let's see. Apparently, Ryan is now claiming he's leaving because he had difficulties juggling his home life in Europe and work responsibilities in North America. He also figured out a way to print food dye with a picture of him on sugar cookies and give them away. It is surprising, though, that we have this thank you party happening, and yet we still don't have a new person in charge of PlayStation announced. Feels like a very, very rough transition is about to happen for Sony Interactive Entertainment. Let's see. Apparently, Nintendo of Japan was going to have a live 2024 in Splatoon event, but they canceled it over safety fears. The company says its employees have been the subject of threats, which have spread to fans. Nintendo in particular is increasingly either getting threats because people in Japan in particular are unhappy with what Nintendo is doing, or Nintendo is becoming increasingly thin-skinned about getting threats. In fairness, they have a lot of right to be thin-skinned. Caution makes a lot of sense. The arsonist who burnt down one of the animation studios is currently on trial and potentially going to be executed for burning down the animation studio building, which is still questionable to me. Why was it so easy to burn down an entire building? But yeah, and then there was the assassination of Shinzo Abe in Japan. So just increasingly, Japan is seeing, I think, a level of violence amongst its citizens, particularly its mentally disturbed citizens, I think, much more than what it has seen in many decades. And so, yeah, I don't know if they aren't very much rightfully so right to be cautious. But yeah, certainly sucks for Nintendo fans that just wanted to go to a Splatoon event or a Nintendo Live event. And I don't think Japanese citizens are particularly any more crazy than any other citizens anywhere. It's just they're catching up in Japan finally. YouTube also is testing out this pause comments function, which potentially would allow you to maintain the current comments and not just turn them off completely and hide comments. Because I don't believe at the moment there's a way to turn off comments and still show comments, and you can delete comments that people put on your videos. That there definitely is room for manipulation here if this gets fully implemented. Somebody can put out a video that would have a lot of controversial negative comments and pause comments originally, and then wait until things cool down and then unpause comments, and then most people would never know that comments were paused in the first place. Or there's a situation where you could get people to be positive and happy and put down comments in the first 24 hours, and then you pause comments so nobody can retort or make any negative comments. You could see somebody potentially getting into a scandal and trying to pause comments on all of their videos so nobody mentions the new scandal. There's just a lot of manipulation here, and certainly it's not free speech at some point. Like, the having a pause or an off is basically the same. Either it's a public forum in which you can speak freely at any time, or it isn't. And obviously it isn't. And then apparently, I don't know why you would release this at the same time, but a full 2-hour Game Awards ceremony from 1999 has been shared online. This is the annual Interactive Achievement Awards. And here you can see, I believe this is Shigeru Miyamoto, much younger version of him. This was released by the National Game History Foundation, which, yeah, I don't know why you would specifically put it out at around the same time, a day before, a day after the Game Awards, unless you're actively trying to sabotage the hype around the Game Awards. Particularly since this is historical, this is yet another thing that would work very well in January and February in the slump times. Speaking of slump times, there's that's a bad transition. There was a new survey that came out that said only 38% of gamers buy games at full price. So the vast majority of people have learned their lessons as far as not pre-ordering games and not paying full price for games. Maybe this was 38% of PC gamers instead of gamers in general. I'm not sure, I don't remember. But yeah, I imagine there are still people that are buying 1 or 2 games at full price though. Yeah, I saw slick deals, by the way, of Super Mario RPG is already discounted if you go through the slick deals deal. So here was the OLED giveaway. It ended. Here is basically what I saw at the beginning. Server errors. Steam VR Fest daily reward. We'll go ahead and claim a sticker. Why not? And so here were the games that were left over from last stream. So theoretically, now we're going to look at only the new games that I've pre-curated from a couple days ago that I'm going to make YouTube shorts on and put on the fall list. This should have been on the fall list anyways. And certainly there is more interesting things here as far as all of that goes. This also stops me from having to have. It's gonna fail every time, isn't it? It stops me from having to have the auto blur enabled and all. It's still mostly not a lot to say here around these games. And some of them are definitely going to be things that are going to be iffier as far as games that come out. I'd say the actual number of tabs here are still fairly small, which I expect that to be the case throughout the rest of the year. One of the big problems here with separating out these games into different windows is that I need to leave some kind of marker to know which group of windows and tabs was the most recent ones, because I often have 4 or 5 different windows of Firefox open with many tabs in each window. It is the number one reason why I still have a need for 64 gigs of RAM versus 32 gigs of RAM, which is that the way I browse and the way that I have tabs open is incredibly memory requiring. DLC for Vampire Survivors. Some of these are not actually just games I curated as much as these are games that I was going to make YouTube shorts on based on news stories. It actually works fairly well for me to curate the games off screen, because it doesn't mean I almost never get anything done after I stream anyways for the rest of the day for at least 4 to 8 hours. So yeah, that is, it's better for me, frankly, to have some work to do where I can just be quiet and let my voice rest. This was the Wholesome event. I was trying to remember the name. Wholesome Snack from Wholesome Games. I didn't see a real presentation around this at all. So apparently there was a 30-minute presentation that was just 2 ladies in front of their cameras. Okay. So then that's going to just bring us back to where I normally start, which is looking at the charts as far as what games people are playing. Yeah. And I haven't flipped a switch to start looking at adult games again, so there'll be a couple of days in which I won't look at and curate adult games, but I'm also going to be curating them for almost no reason, because I basically can't talk about them. I've been gagged completely. I can't even likely say the names without fear of getting my channel deleted. Looks like we're seeing a significant bump in the players of the top 15 games or so. Seems almost like 20% more players as far as the last 24-hour peak. Interesting. Although, if you look at this chart, it really does feel like it is fairly flat. I don't know if this chart is accurate. And looking at my chart, seeing a significant increase again of GTA 5 players, and I think some other Baldur's Gate 3 players. They're all crammed up down here in this section. Now, it would make a lot more sense to really coordinate it somewhere around 250,000 players and just cut off the top even more. we already have Counter-Strike 2 way at the top, and CSGO way at the top, which is the same game, and Dota way at the top. We can barely see PUBG, and yeah, this chart just doesn't really work well. I almost wonder if this is just the wrong style of chart completely, and it very possibly is, but I don't know a better chart, and I spent a lot of extra time building this chart for it to barely work. The Steam Fest is still going on. Saw a trailer for this game, The Finals, and yeah, I'd never heard of this before. Although, in all fairness, even if I had seen it, these screenshots look pretty boring. This thumbnail looks somewhat interesting. Let's see. It doesn't feel like they've updated the game winners on the event on the front page of Steam. Maybe I'm not even signed in. Interesting. I think I may have gotten signed out. Ooh, well, that could create an issue. I'll have to investigate that later. Anyways, so we'll go through the video game news articles, not talk about Video Game Chronicles podcast. Case of the Golden Idol is getting a sequel set in the 1970s, which I don't recognize this game at all. Yeah, at this current time, trailers really should be for games that don't have release dates, or are just saying we may give you more information in 2024, but we probably aren't even releasing the game in 2024. Although you could do the exact opposite too. You could be showing trailers for games that are just about to come out in February of 2024 and March of 2024, and try and fill in the first half of the year more with better AAA games, which the first half of the year is very light on good AAA games, or good games in general. Switch Online is adding Harvest Moon 64, Jet Force Gemini, and 1080 degree snowboarding, which some of those I'm actually a little surprised that it would bother. 1080 degrees snowboarding. I feel like Jet Force Gemini had come out already. Was there a different Jet Force game that they had released earlier? Maybe. But yeah. Seems like they are going to fill out the Nintendo 64 category of ROMs more than I thought they would, where I could easily have seen Nintendo only highlighting their own first party title games for Nintendo 64 and really only curating a few of them. It'll be interesting to see if something like the Star Fox RPG game, what was that one called, gets released, or some of the more embarrassing games get released from the Nintendo 64 era. Alan Wake 2's new Game Plus mode arrives next week. The final draft update will also introduce a new ending and difficulty mode. Haven't really heard anybody say anything about Alan Wake 2. And it definitely is a great example of a game that probably never would have gotten enough players to make it to the trending charts. So if it is just going to be a case that a game is not popular unless a lot of people are all playing it in the same 24-hour period, there's going to be a large list of games that are, by that rough, poor definition, not popular. But I wouldn't be surprised also if Alan Wake 2 isn't really being played by that many people, and it is just being hyped a little bit by game mainstream video game critics, and even at that, it's not being hyped that much. Final Fantasy XVI Story DLC has been released with a second expansion due in the spring of 2024. Is Final Fantasy XVI the MMO? I don't think it is. It's the newest one. And a PC version is in development, but isn't out yet. The Ori developer Moon Studios has revealed an action RPG called No Rest for the Wicked, which these will all be Game Award announcements pretty much, and a lot of these will not have links potentially. Yeah, sorry, my blur still is enabled that way. Yeah, the problem with Ori is I can't really remember whether Ori is one game or another. Well, regardless, looking at this thumbnail, this doesn't look anything like Ori. And looking at this trailer, this doesn't look much like this thumbnail. They're saying that the title is poised to reinvent the genre of action RPG, which, okay, we shall see when we get to it, although I don't know how much you could really reinvent the genre of action RPG before you're just creating a new genre. Can you really reinvent any genre, just generally speaking? Saber Interactive announced a Jurassic Park survival game, which I guess it's an interesting thought. I would kind of think that this would be a single player story driven survival experience. If it isn't, it's going to be very weird to potentially just constantly try and survive on the Jurassic Park Island, one of them anyways, and fight the same scenarios, fight the same dinosaurs over and over again. Potentially, if it's a survival game where you're just gaining resources or building fortresses and buildings, eventually you'd just be overpowering the dinosaurs, which would be kind of crazy. Now, the problem here, after a big awards ceremony like this, is there is a real temptation to just hit play on all the trailers and watch all the trailers, but in the interest of saving time, I'm not going to do any of that. Most of these trailers don't show much. They're 2-3 minutes at most, and they're showing pre-production footage, and it's just not stuff that is actually telling you anything that's true. It's basically just lying to you visually, whereas the actual facts are just the headlines, such as A Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons remake has been announced, which that was a very poorly kept secret. It does look to me like the graphics might be slightly improved here compared to what they looked like originally, but I don't know what you can really do to remake the story without totally changing the events of the end of the story to make it better. And honestly, maybe that's what they should do. If it is a full-on remake, why not change the events of the events of the story? In particular, I'll just spoil the original version of the game and say that this older brother dies throughout the course of it in a really stupid way, and it would be, I guess, better if you're going to try and have a series called The Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, to keep both brothers alive and have two sons at the end of your story, so that you could potentially make a sequel. I wouldn't be surprised if they were kicking themselves for their stupidity as far as killing off the main one of the brothers when the game was fairly well received. Now, it was mostly well received because it told a decent experience and a decent story with an interesting gimmick control scheme. In the remake, they probably can't just rely on that gimmick control scheme, though. They probably need to think more outside the box. And the gimmick control scheme of controlling both characters at the same time and both characters working with each other, you're going to have to expand that idea a lot more. Here we have Video Games Chronicles, just rounding up all the announcements. So, article linking to a whole bunch of articles. See, yeah, they have the full winners list. Baldur's Gate 3 dominating, taking 6 prizes, while Alan Wake 2 scooped up 3. So I guess Alan Wake 2 really was the second best received one from the voters, from the mainstream video game journalists that voted on it. Which arguably I would say the jury pool of the Game Awards may not even fully align with what I would describe as mainstream video game journalists. They're mostly that, but there are also some weird people that have managed to become juries members when they probably shouldn't be in the jury. Baldur's Gate 3 winning is not super surprising and not something I inherently disagree with, though I would have liked to see Resident Evil 7 Remake get an award, and arguably that is where a category that Jeff Keighley was asked about, why isn't there a category for Best Remake? Why don't you have that? It definitely would have benefited this year to have a category for Best Remake and give that to Resident Evil 7. And honestly, you could make categories and straight up say, if we don't have any good nominees for this category, we just won't give out an award this year. Like that is a possibility. Baldur's Gate 3 is also out on Xbox now, which I would have sworn it already was on Xbox. Monster Hunter Wilds has been announced for the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S and PC. The new game will be released in 2025. So a new Monster Hunter game, which you could always bet on a new Monster Hunter game. Light No Fire is the next game from No Man's Sky studio Hello Games. This time they're going to try and make what they're calling true open world, in the sense that it is going to be a procedurally generated entire planet bigger than Earth, I believe. Something bigger than Earth. Something with real mountains, not video game mountains, but mountains that are miles high and taller than Everest. That when you climb to the top of them and look, you can see rivers, canyons, and continents and oceans. Yeah, which that'll be difficult, certainly, to visually render with a GPU, and let alone maintain with RAM and CPU. Clearly, Hello Games has one gimmick in that they want to make way too big of a game, and they're just way too ambitious. Honestly, I would have preferred them to try a different gimmick and try to make something small as their second game. Small but detailed instead of giant landmass and not very detailed. No Man's Sky launched very poorly and took years to get finally polished into a decent state. And even at that, there still was no real argument to say, if you're not enjoying Starfield, you should go and play No Man's Sky instead. And there's never going to really be a reason to point people to go back and try and play No Man's Sky. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League will receive an offline mode after launch, which promises, I guess is all I can say to that. And I think a lot of this news is old, so I don't know why we're inherently getting so much old news from Video Games Chronicle from my macro. It does seem like it's happening consistently now that something's broken. Fortnite, the original Fortnite, seems to be getting a resurgence. and I'll be interested to see if that doesn't lead to Lego Fortnite actually getting a decent amount of people playing that too. Although I have to say personally, I kind of hate the idea of Lego Fortnite, because it really is at that point Lego allowing some game developer to effectively just ruin what the idea of Lego is. Because Lego minifigs have never been action figure. They've never really, in my mind at least, been designed so that your action figures would fight each other, your wrestling figures, your He-Man versus Skeletor would fight each other. And that's all Lego Fortnite looks like, is it is just fighting over and over again. TT Games had already pushed out the idea of building from Lego. And so, like Lego Star Wars, the remake of the Skywalker saga or the original Lego Star Wars, either one, and all those Lego games had very minimal amounts of building or being creative with Legos in favor of smashing things and collecting Lego studs, which is not really something you do with Legos. Most kids, I don't think, smash their Legos into pieces just to collect the smaller components, or take apart their Lego sets in general. Some do, certainly, but Lego mostly, when you get the more expensive models, is designed to be built once and then put on the shelf, or not taken apart and redone. But yeah, this is just the next step, unfortunately, away from there being any creativity or anything that's really Lego at all, is what Lego Fortnite feels like to me. And really, it does just feel like we're going to potentially see Lego license a technology to reskin your game to look like Lego minifigs when your game potentially has nothing to do with that. And that'll be very annoying very quickly if all of a sudden you're playing Lego games that have nothing to do with Lego. Fortnite really doesn't have anything to do with Lego, and really doesn't make any sense to have anything to do with Lego. There's enough of a bad reputation already of Fortnite that I don't think people would all of a sudden let their kids play Lego Fortnite if they've already been told they can't play Fortnite regular. And the name is terrible, certainly, because if you're not building forts, then Fortnite doesn't make sense. Most of this I'm not gonna even mention because it's just very old news, and obviously there's basically no other news other than the Game Awards. This new strategy, new era, new energy, I believe, was set up to reveal a new Dragon Ball game by Sega. Not particularly that interesting. Certainly the wild hopes that almost certainly would have never happened of Sega getting back into the console market and announcing some kind of Steam Deck competitor. That didn't happen. Otherwise, that would be the thing I would be talking about right now. Or them announcing even a new series, or announcing a whole bunch of games. That didn't really seem to happen either. There might be something I'm not getting around Sega themselves making a Dragon Ball game versus other people making Dragon Ball games, but yeah, I don't even know if Sega's made a Dragon Ball game before. In fact, it's a little weird that Sega would be making a Dragon Ball game, so maybe I'm totally wrong about what this whole tease was, but whatever it was a tease for, it didn't pay off. And that's another problem, certainly, of the Game Awards, is that there's not really room for one big announcement, one big surprise announcement. If Nintendo had gotten on stage of the Game Awards and announced a Switch 2, that would have been big news, certainly, but it definitely wouldn't have been a case for all other news to be forgotten. So it would not get as much mind share as Nintendo would like it to get, I'm sure. I did see somebody talking about this subway system, and it is really just a tourist mode. There's some Easter eggs in it, and that's about it. Like, there isn't really missions or things in it. You just get on it, and then you can look out the windows as you're traveling in a slow travel way with their metro system. And let's see. Do I have anything else to talk about? No. Lego has double VIP points for what little they're worth. Sale going on right now, giving away a couple of good rewards. Although, if you do claim one reward with a promo code, you can only use one promo code per order, which screwed me over because I promo code 2 things, and now I have a promo code for a little Lego mini set, free effectively, not really free, that I'd probably have to order something else from. So I'm probably going to end up buying more Lego than I'd like to this year. Overall, though, sales have not been huge as far as what I've been seeing. And it's just kind of crazy that the macro is going back that far as far as Video Games Chronicles articles. Anyways, Gamatsu articles. Genshin Impact version 4.3 update, Roses and Muskets, launches December 20th. So Genshin Impact still happening and being a big deal. Yeah, if I had more free time and I didn't have arthritis in my fingers, I probably would play Genshin Impact. But as a mobile game with so many action buttons you have to smash, and it is more painful by, I'd say, at least 15% to tap on a screen for a long amount of time than it is to press buttons on the controllers. Controllers just have squishier interfaces and are in a more comfortable holding position compared to on-screen touchscreen puts. Blue Protocol for PS5 and Xbox Series launches December 13th in Japan. Game Award winners were announced. There definitely were some trailers that so far we have not seen. I wonder if I should also drop and stop using the Gamatsu title bars and just go back to the scrolls, because I never really got the title bars at the front looking at the top looking good. But yeah, there definitely was at least one game where it's a deaf girl who's signing, who also has some love for music somehow, and it goes on this kind of magical musical journey, and it's supposed to be, I think, the world's first accessible or deaf accessible musical game. And I don't know how in the world they're really going to do it. Plus, if someone is deaf, it's fantastical and unhelpful to really tell a story where she goes to a magical land and she can then hear, because that's just not realistic at all. And if it's not realistic, it's not no reason to encourage somebody on something that's not likely to happen. Here we can see the finals is already at 65%, so people are not particularly receiving it well. Maybe that's why I haven't heard of the game, is that they just sneak released it. Final Fantasy 16 DLC Echoes of the Fallen and the Rising Tide have been announced. Guilty Gear Strive DLC character Elfeet Valentine is now available, and 3-player team battle mode is coming in 2024. So here you have a cat girl fighter character. This is a great example of the anime art style in which you can just draw the clothes impossibly tight and to the point where they're effectively glued on. Never really seen anybody really go that far though, trying to effectively glue on clothes. You have double stick tape used in fashion certainly, but if you wanted something really form-fitting, you probably would have some custom-made latex catsuit type design, or gimp suit, whatever you call it. I guess that's a catsuit if it doesn't have a hood. Would be the difference there. We talked about Light No Fire for PC. It's already got a Steam page. I'm still trying to see if my macro works or not. What I'm thinking is the case is that not my macro, the plugin. What I'm thinking is I need to change the settings, then reset all of Firefox to have the settings work. But honestly, I really probably won't test it much until after the stream ends anyways. But yeah, it may just not work at all, and it may not matter that it doesn't work. Really. But I'm trying to get this whole process to be as efficient as possible. As Dusk Falls is coming to the PS4 and 5 on March 7th. Palia for Switch launches December 15th. Currently, it's an Epic Games Store exclusive. It's an MMO. Yeah. I feel like MMOs in particular run into this problem of having too much competition and not enough people that are probably interested in it, or at least I'm personally not interested in ever playing an MMO. But looking at these characters and models, if you told me this was some kind of RPG where you're playing with just a weird group of somewhat normal looking people, that would be interesting. Level Infinite and Shark Mob announced an open world extraction shooter called Exoborn for the PS5 and Xbox Series and PC. Not sure if extraction shooters as a category are particularly something that should stay around either. And it's only slightly different from just a regular shooter. Feels like a shooter game should, like every game that's a shooter, should have an extraction mission. Techno thriller co-op heist shooter called Den of Wolves has been announced for PC. Man, I'm not reading particularly good today. I'm noticing, however, that we are getting a decent amount of Steam pages for these new announcements. Which, if that's one thing game developers have learned this year, then I guess that is some slight improvement, is to just have the Steam page ready to go once you announce the game initially. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 launches September 9th, 2024. This guy looks really old looking for Space Marine. Unless that's supposed to be the Emperor, which I don't think it is. Maybe that is part of the story though, is that you're this old Space Marine. Apparently though, I already had this on the follow list. But I'll make another YouTube short around it since I bet it has a release date now. Multiplayer mech action game Mecha Break has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Yep. That was one thing that occurred to me, is that potentially I could make a second channel of just YouTube shorts and make it a shorts channel, which some people have done in the past, but they really don't want you to do that on YouTube. They heavily said don't do that. In fact, people were making shorts channels before YouTube shorts existed. They were making short video channels that they put shorter videos on. It definitely would be nice if there was a system which I could have a good database of knowing whether I've made a YouTube short around a game or not. Of course, if I tried to even make it, it would be buggy and wouldn't work before I had to put a ton of polish into it to make it finally work. Zenless Zone Zero launches in 2024 for PC, iOS, and Android as a free-to-play urban fantasy RPG, which arguably at this point we need to just drop the RPG part of it and use the other descriptors, because there's just so many things with RPG in the name. Again, if I had more time, I might actually watch this trailer. The first Descendant launches in the summer of 2024, which is, I assume, no way connected to a game I played relatively recently called The Descendant, or The Descendants. Yep, this is a completely unrelated game. Lightspeed LA announces a AAA open world game called The Last Sentinel. I believe this is the new company that Japanese lady who was super high energy works at now. She was at Tango Gameworks, I think, originally, and then left, and she was at the Game Awards being super high energy again, with her silly high energy way of talking. If anything, I imagine she's probably really annoying to other Japanese people by getting away with it, by acting like a teenager, a Japanese teenage girl, amongst Westerners. This trailer didn't really show me any screenshots, really don't show me as much as I'd like to. I do think we'll see a trend, and we saw a little bit of it at this year's Game Awards, of a lot more focus on hyper-realistic faces and visuals, and that they are just going to try and push realism once again as much as they can push it as far as the visuals go. Bethesda Softworks and Arcane Lion have announced a game called Marvel's Blade, or Marvel Blade, no S in the image there. It's a mature single-player third-person game. I assume it's supposed to line up with a theoretical Blade movie that they're pitching or trying to make. The question here is, this Arcane Lion studio, is this really Arcane, or is this a company that it just took Arcane's name? And Bethesda Softworks, is that really Bethesda? Which, in case, why are they working on this instead of working on an Elder Scrolls game instead, or even Starfield? I wouldn't be surprised if Bethesda Softworks is yet another middle management company that is publishing the game, and Arcane Lion is developing it. Moving on, Skull and Bones finally launches February 16th of 2024, which maybe means we can finally stop hearing about these pirate games that have been in development forever. This would be Ubisoft. They spent a massive amount of money and time developing Skull and Bones for a game that almost certainly isn't going to succeed as well as it needs to. Honkai Star Rail Pinakoni teaser trailer is available on Gematsu if you want to check that out. It's interesting how Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail, both as mobile games, have managed to gain enough credibility that they're now being treated almost on the same level as any other game. Let's see, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth theme song trailer and more detailed on Gematsu if you want to check that out. The first Berserker Kazan world premiere trailer and screenshots are on Gematsu if you want to check that out. Don't Nod announces a game called Lost Records Bloom and Rage for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. It's a story-driven through time, which sounds a lot like the other Don't Nod games that have been done before. Which I can't even remember what the name of that game was. That they made several non-sequels to. Life is Strange is the name of the series I'm thinking of, yeah. So they're once again doing a Life is Strange style game. Lots of female protagonists, which seems weird because it always felt like it was a couple of Canadian guys working on it, on the game, but yeah, I don't even know what to really say here. This really just feels like it's Life is Strange all over again, unless they're going to go with a full-on horror aspect of this, and I just don't really think that's what's going to happen here. Maybe there'll be a little bit more scariness here than what we saw in Life is Strange. And that's an example of an announcement that if it was made during the Game Awards, I did not even see it. EA and Surgent Studios announced Tales of Kenzera Zao for PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. Which, let's see what Steam has to show us for screenshots. This might very well be a game that was inspired in part by the Wakanda Forever movement in the first Black Panther movie, and just taken this long to make a game featuring a black protagonist. Ready or Not launches December 13th, which was this, some kind of shooter, military shooter? It doesn't look particularly interesting to me, but it does look like the kind of game other people might care about, particularly if they're not having fun with Modern Warfare. Let's see, Kill the Justice League No More Heroes trailer, if you want to check that out on Gematsu. I'm starting to yawn and fall asleep already. Black Myth Wukong launches August 20th, 2024. Which, every time I hear about this game, I was sworn it was already out. I think I'm confusing the name with something else. Looks like you're playing as the Monkey King. Then the Jurassic Park game for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Yeah. In a lot of ways, you only really have to make a game that slightly retells the story of the first Jurassic Park movie, and most people would be fairly happy with that. Microsoft apparently is working with Kojima Productions to announce OD, the game that, quote, explores the concept of testing your fear threshold, end quote. Maybe this is somewhat Videodrome inspired. Maybe it's going to show you a bunch of scary things and then take your blood pressure while you're playing the game. Actually, I'm a little surprised that there isn't a gimmick game like that. There probably was something for like the Game Boy like that, where it came with a real blood pressure meter. And well, the problem though is if you're talking blood pressure, you can't take someone's blood pressure over and over again without potentially giving them a heart attack, and you can't really even take someone's blood pressure without taking on a lot of legal liability of giving them a heart attack the first time. And there's no real other way to measure fear responses without a camera on people or listening for the breathing or things like that. So, yeah. It says for all players and screamers, maybe you have to scream into the mic, and that's where all this waves come from as an audio thing. Of course, I could just basically speculate around what OD is, when in reality I wouldn't be surprised if Hideo Kojima doesn't even know what it really is at this point. The Outlast Trials launch March 5th, 2024. We definitely are deep into 2024 at this point. There's no surprise releases that are going to come out, really. Outlast Trials. I'd have to remind myself what the Outlast games have been up until this point. Rise of the Ronin launches March 22nd, 2024. For PlayStation 5 exclusively, it seems. Visions of Mana has been announced for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox Series and PC. Take note here, though, that even though the PS5 and the Xbox Series launched basically at the same time, there is a considerably larger amount of games still being released for the PS4, when nothing is being released really for the Xbox One. A game with mana in the name certainly can inspire some hopeful thoughts, but that doesn't inherently mean that it will be a good game and be anywhere worthy of the Mana series, Secret of Mana series. Supermassive Games announced the casting of Frank Stone for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. A new game set in the Dead by Daylight universe. What kind of game is it, though? Because it almost feels like it has to be a single player experience. Yeah. There's a potential here that this is going to just be a side demo of the Dead by Daylight universe and the Dead by Daylight game, or this could be a way in which they can take a lot of the content that they've already made as far as the level designs of Dead by Daylight and turn it into a single player game for the pretty big percentage of people who don't want to play an asynchronous horror multiplayer game like Dead by Daylight, although you still are limiting yourself severely by making it a horror game. I will be interested in seeing more information about what this game actually is later on. Of course, when do I see more and get more details? It's almost never, because I never really have time to look at the trailers, and I never really do. And that's fine, really. Here's the Dragon Ball game. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. It's going to be Budokai Tenkaichi taken to a whole new level. And this is Spike Chunsoft and Bandai. Yeah, this is not Sega. So I have no idea what the Sega announcement was. So I assume this is a fighting game, and what this is effectively just adding blue-haired Goku and remaking the Budokai Tenkaichi series to be a more modern versions of the same fighting games, effectively. I mean, they're all pretty much the same fighting game, telling the same story. When it comes to Dragon Ball, that's all they can really do. Sega announces... Okay, here's the Sega announcement. They announced a new Crazy Taxi, Golden Axe, Jet Set Radio, Shinobi, and Streets of Rage games. Okay, that's something. That's almost certainly the right move for Sega. Announce new games based on your old games and commit to actually making games, even though we don't really have a lot of faith in Sega and shouldn't have a lot of faith in Sega, that they actually do a good job of playing and making games. I just realized that the image, the wallpaper I have on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, gets brighter and darker where the sun flare is. And I just looked down and I was looking at my TV and I'm like, why is that getting brighter and darker? I can't show it though, so. So each of these games really should be their own separate announcements with trailers, but instead Sega is not really doing a great job of making announcements here, just showing what looks like screenshots and trailers. This is an Okami game. This is not Streets of Rage. What is this? This might be Streets of Rage. This is Shinobi. So this might be Shinobi too. It's a good first start, but not a great first start. Let's actually just see how long this trailer really was, because I do want to see more here. Now, this is a problem I've seen happen before, is that you have these adults, like mid-20s level people, dressed and acting like teenagers. It's like we've totally lost the idea of having the teenagers be in their own commercials, because that totally was the thing, is that you would have teenagers or actors pretending to be teenagers having like way more money and doing way more than a teenager actually could. Now the problem with the Jet Set Radio, I mean, Well, the problem with a lot of these games is going to be the same in that they've taken so long to make sequels. Somebody else has already made some spiritual sequels or something better. And yeah. Sega is going to inherently, and they're even doing the eyeball reveal, they're definitely trying to play back on nostalgia for those adult actors who probably are still a little too young for those commercials. But yeah, there's already a spiritual successor or clone of Jet Set Radio that's going to beat them to the market. No Crazy Taxi. I'm sure there's Streets of Rage games and Shinobi style games and Golden Axe franchise style games. They really need for every single one of these games to be major successes if in this outing, and they need to put a lot of effort into it and not cancel half of these games or just shove them out as poorly made, rushed games, which I wouldn't be surprised if Jet Set Radio is poorly made and rushed. The other problem Sega's going to run into is that they're going to run out of the nostalgia play games fairly quickly too. Like there's only so many other Sega based IPs they could lean into before they run out of ideas. But yeah, it is also crazy that announcement didn't get more coverage. That's another thing that I feel like is a problem with the Game Awards, and I'd say this is a problem with award shows in general, is that when something gets announced, the people in the audience, the people on stage, just immediately move on to the next thing. They don't get hyped about it, they don't talk about it, they don't say, wow, that was amazing. Or if they do say that, they say it for like a minute right after the trailer plays, and that's it. Where it would be a lot nicer if people had some time to ingest and there was like a post show to talk about what was just seen and just cover it, and yeah, or just more time in between every announcement. It feels like what you'd want to experiment with is, yeah, again, if I was Jeff Keighley, I'd put the Game Awards show at the end of February, and I would take all the announcements and trailers, and I would make that be the road to the Game Awards, and I would put out a new trailer every day for 60 days, 30 days, whatever. And just every single day, there would be a new announcement for a new game. That one announcement would be talked about that one day. Maybe 60 days is too long. Maybe you do like a 30-day advent calendar equivalent. But just like a new trailer, a new announcement happening there, to all leading up to a prestigious Game Awards that is focused 100% at that point on just giving awards and not focused on trailers. Or maybe even you re-show a lot of the trailers at the Game Awards with maybe a few more seconds of footage even. There's a lot of ways you could do it. Moving on, Private Division and the Moon Studios have announced an action RPG called No Rest for the Wicked. Which, again, now we've got a Steam link because we're looking at Gamatsu. Yeah. For the most part, it looks like it might be a Diablo clone. Or it may just be a top-down action RPG game of some sort. Unseen announces a game called Kimurai, which, what does the screenshots tell me about this? Not much. I don't know if Kimurai means anything in Japanese. I wouldn't be surprised if it's some variant on a samurai or something against samurai. This is an interesting subheadline: an original intellectual property created by Ikumi Nakamura. Which I don't know why they're particularly focusing on that. I don't even know who Ikumi Nakamura is. Definitely feels like these are samurai characters fighting each other in a modern skyscraper landscape. Or not fighting each other, maybe fighting a bunch of demons. Yeah, they're fighting yokai demons. Anyways, I need to hurry up. Still, I'm not going to be taking that much longer. We'll be done in 30 minutes, I'm sure. Probably less than that. Senua Saga Hellblade 2 has a Game Awards trailer. If you want to check that out on Gamatsu. As I didn't really like Senua Saga 1, Hellblade 1. I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. The Prince of Persia Lost Crown showed off a story trailer, which I don't believe it had as much off-putting rap in the trailer video, but again, I wasn't really paying attention to it. Definitely felt like it was trying more to give personality and characters and stories to our new Prince of Persia character. But for this single screen I looked at, it definitely still feels like it is not really much of a Prince of Persia game from what you would expect from the original Prince of Persia or from the Sands of Time series, which obviously you should make something that feels a lot like the Sands of Time series if you're going to make something called Prince of Persia. Panic and House announced a co-op adventure game called Big Walk for PC, which that is a couple of weird names, to say the least. And for the most part, I still am leaning towards making a YouTube short on anything that bothers to make a press release and get it on Gamatsu. So normally I might consider dismissing this game for its weird visuals, but I won't. And then God of War Ragnarok free DLC Valhalla has been announced. Now, noticeably, in the few seconds I watched this trailer, I didn't see the boy anywhere. And if this is called Valhalla, I assume what happens, as far as a spoiler to God of War Ragnarok, I don't know if this happens, but I'm assuming that this guy, Kratos, ends up dead. Which probably is about the second or third time he's probably ended up dead in the series. Otherwise, I would think you would have to figure out some way to either get rid of the boy or play as the boy in any potential future God of War game. I wouldn't be surprised if this Valhalla DLC definitely focuses on opening up a door for yet another sequel or reboot of some sort. And I guess God of War is a PlayStation exclusive. Ragnarok is a PlayStation exclusive because it's not tagged with any other consoles. I'm pretty sure the first God of War of this generation of God of War games is on Steam. A sci-fi action adventure game called RPG Exodus or it's an action-adventure RPG called Exodus, has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Well, that looks different in the visual style. As I've been watching some of the terrible sci-fi TV shows and such, it does really come down in my mind as far as how would you animate or costume set dress a sci-fi series for success today if you're trying to make a new Star Trek or something like that. Like, is there a good way to do it, or does it end up with everybody feeling weird? And the outfits here, the makeup here, this feels like something that you really could do in a live action TV series fairly well. But yeah, as far as a video game goes, maybe it's a little too subtle for visuals. I noticed on Prime Video the Halo series is on there, so I probably should bother to sit through that and watch as many video game TV series and movies just to know what they are all about. A game called Metaphor ReFantasio launches in the fall of 2024. This is from Atlas. It's coming to PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, and PC via Steam, but seemingly doesn't have a Steam link. There was a trailer for Persona during the Game Awards, I believe, too. So, but I guess it may have just been a trailer, because I'm not seeing anybody mention it. Or maybe this was the trailer. This may have been the trailer I saw, and I may have just assumed this was Persona. I think that's exactly what happened. And then our last Gematsu article for today says World of Goo 2 has been announced. Now I question this. A, they were far too slow to announce the World of Goo 2. It's been 15 years. But I also question if there are just new physics puzzles and levels that they can actually make, or if this isn't going to be a case where World of Goo 2 is just going to feel like a few slightly different levels compared to World of Goo 1. And the Tomorrow Corporation otherwise has not really done a great job of making games, and I don't know what 2D Boy has been doing in the past 15 years. They did make some programming games, and I did like their programming games, but that is a very weird niche, and either they needed to double down on making more programming games, which would be difficult, or they needed to have made more indie small games like World of Goo. Anyways, that's going to bring us to the GameDeveloper.com articles, which we may have talked about all of them already. Anyways, Yinglet, the developer of Triple Topping, is closing its doors after declaring bankruptcy. Triple Topping, never heard of it, nor have I heard of Yinglet. It's a funky spelled name. CD Projekt voluntarily recognizes the Polish Developer Union. Again, it is weird, particularly for game developer who, for the most part, I always kind of felt like was more about the workers, that their headlines are phrasing this in such of a way to make it look like CD Projekt is really the great guys and that they are just not actively trying to union bust and fight. I did see a story on Reddit where an employee angrily argued to the other employees that they shouldn't unionize, and then straight up quit because the job was terrible a few weeks later. So yeah, which I don't know if there's anything that really stops you from holding another vote at that point, but that is pretty crazy. But I also wouldn't be surprised if there are things like that that happen as far as union busting, where they convince an employee to convince the other employees to not unionize, and then they give a glowing review to them, or somehow give them money or give them a promotion. We already talked about The Walking Dead Betrayal getting delisted. Never even heard of it. And then Rovio is going to close down its Montreal developer studio Lumi, which was it an animation studio or a game studio? What games are these? Yeah, they shut down the studio, and apparently only 16 employees were in that studio, which that is a great point to highlight, is that a lot of these game studios really could not have that many people in them. And then we talked about the Nintendo Live events falling threats against the staff. I don't know if they ever are going to go into any real details here. And then we talked about GameStop. And that's the new end of the show as it is. I will look at the Steam fall list cleanup off screen and clean up my fall list and really have nothing to report back from that. I will then look at all the new games that came out today, and then on Monday there will be a curated list of those new games that I'll show off. But I also need to flip the switch and look at adult games and put them in the fall list for some future use. Even if it really does come down to just my personal commitment to keep an eye out and understand what the state of adult games on Steam is, I may very well just talk in general terms about saying, hey, I saw a lot of adult games this day, I saw none this day, I saw a really good one this day called blank blank. I may even have to somewhat rephrase what the titles of games are so that they don't have offensive names or adult names. It may have to be in nebulous terms like that, but at the very least, in my mind, I'll know what the adult games are, so I'm not abandoning the idea of looking at that part of the industry and being educated at that part of the industry. Anyways, I feel like there was something else I wanted to say, but I can't remember. So that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.